Screen Slurp.
Hello and welcome to Screen Slurps, the movie review podcast where we discuss everything that is good, that is bad, and that is savage in the world of cinema. I'm Adam Meisner.
And I'm Dash Gearhart, and this episode we are reviewing the 1954 film Rear Window, directed and produced by Alfred Hitchcock.
Hey, why not the
Adam,
front window? Let me ask you that.
what's out your front window, Adam?
I'm just saying, you keep looking out the rear window. What about the front window? I could be sneaking in there.
That's not real. My front window, it's just a window that leads to a giant TV, and I could just flip the channel and I could be anywhere in the world. I could live in the mountains in the Carpathians, or I could live in a treehouse in
I
Amazon.
don't believe you. I do not believe you. You're not going to look out the front window. You're not going to look out the side window. It's always the rear window. You never check the front windows. That's it. I'm breaking up. I'm leaving.
Breaking up. Adam, all you have to do is prove me wrong. Come in through my front window.
All right, then. I guess.
Hey, what are you doing? Are you trying to break in my place? Are you trying to break in my front window?
Well, you'll never know if you don't check.
You're right. And that's why there's a whole movie made about rear windows.
Ooh.
Just one rear window, actually. But before we get into that, I'm going to ask Adam, what has he been slurping this past week? Yes, I ask him that every week. And if you're new to us, what I mean by that is, what has Adam been watching, reading, playing, maybe making this past week besides watching the classic film Rear Window?
I tell you, DJ, I have been watching something that we were literally just joking about, and no, we're not actually breaking up, nor did we have anything to break in the first place. But I've been watching, I've been watching a show that's brand new to me, maybe not new to you listeners, but it's brand new to me, and I thought it's actually quite fascinating in my mind. But the show is called Love is Blind, and it just blows my mind to think that these people are put under the study of hooking up without seeing one another. And on one hand, I find a study like that to be, a little silly in one hand, to think that no one has ever done a study like this where the whole situation is done only by voice. And on the other hand, I find that very fascinating that these people are hooking up only by hearing one another, and that some of them may be in a successful scenario where they actually get married. I haven't finished the entire first season yet. I don't know who stays together or who does not. Yes, I've gone an entire year without finding out who stays together.
Wait, how does this work in? They just put two people in the dark and they're like, do it?
No, they're not in the dark. They have a group of guys and a group of girls, and it's almost like, if you can imagine the real world, except the guys and the girls are separate from one another, and the guys have their own hangout area and the girls have their own hangout area. And then when a day goes on, they basically go on dates, and a date consists of the guy goes in a room and the girl goes in a room, and the rooms are sort of adjoining, but there's a wall between them. And so the guy can't see the girl, and it's basically like the guy saying, or the girl saying, hello, how's it going? And that's all they get. They can't see each other at all. They only hear their voice. So they basically have a conversation through this wall and try to get to know one another.
Oh, so they don't actually hook up. They just chat.
They're relying entirely on talking to one another, and they do that for up to 10 days. So there's, I believe, 10 different girls and 10 different guys. And they each go on these dates with each and every one of them. And the idea is, whichever girl and guy feel most comfortable with one another, the guy will then try and propose to one of the girls. And they, will explain to them, like any other human being in the world, like, I feel so connected to you. This just feels right. Will you marry me? And potentially the girl would be like, yes, I'll marry you. All by voice. They don't even see each other. And after all is said and done, if they decide to marry each other, they will actually get to see each other. And then they will go on a 4-week resort vacation together where they do get to see each other. And that's also part of the test, where it's kind of like, well, now you get to try and get to know each other physically and see if things work out together. And it just
is this after they get married?
No, that's before they get married.
Okay.
that's leading up to their marriage. So it's kind of like they get 4 weeks together to get to know each other on a physical level, not necessarily meaning they just get to bang, but they could of course do that too. But yeah, so it's very interesting to think that you could just meet someone via voice. It'd be kind of like just phone calling someone, never seeing what they look like or anything, and only hearing their voice, and then deciding, yeah, we're just connecting, so let's go get married.
How often do pairs end up together?
I have no idea, because I think out of all of the people that were in that small group of potential hookups, I think 6 of them made it to the resort or so, and even still some of them are not quite making it through. So we'll see how that goes to the end of the season.
Well, that's interesting. Where can one watch this show?
That show is available to watch on Netflix, and I do believe they are filming season 2 this year in a couple months, I do believe. So very fascinating, just the psychology of the human mind. It's very interesting to think if you weren't using a dating application or social media or just the human life of, going out with your friends or something like that, if you just took all of that away and if it was just the human voice, I think that's very, very fascinating.
Dude, since you're an audio engineer, you should develop a new dating app where it's not visual. Cause like dating apps, like, back when I was single, I would use dating apps and it's all very visual. I would go swipe through these different women and it was all, especially Tinder. Tinder is just like, it's just almost like clickbait, just like pictures, and you get like a little blurb about someone, whereas something like OkCupid, it's like very much, at least back then, it was like much more in depth, much more personal. And, same with like Bumble, and Bumble like incorporates more respect for women, or at least there's more protections to enforce respect for women. But I never thought of something like, or at least like maybe an add-on to like Tinder or Bumble, where you would include like a soundbite of like, maybe you don't include profile pictures where someone is just judged by how they look. Maybe you listen to them, you hear their voice, like, hi, like, I'm looking for this and this kind of person, blah, blah, blah. My free time, I like, long walks on the beach and pina coladas. And then if you both swipe right on each other, then you get to see each other. Dude, you have your idea right now. Like, you're going to be rich. This is the time where we predict Adam's going to be a billionaire from this idea, ladies and gentlemen, from this new dating app, this new voice centered dating app that he stole from a Netflix show that I told him to do. I told him to steal.
It's just a really fascinating sort of thing to me. Just the audiology of human connection through sound, dating through sound. I guess that sort of connects to people being interested in what sort of music that people listen to when they date. It's always something that was sort of in the back of my mind as a musician. When I would talk to people and be like, what are you interested in? And it'd be the difference between one person saying, they listen to Ozzy Osbourne or something, and someone else telling me they listen to Hello Goodbye. I already get an idea of what their personality is. So
that is interesting, because I do remember back when in my single days that I think Tinder included, at least Tinder would include a few songs you can connect to your Spotify with. It's that way people know like your general taste, I guess, through like 3 songs of what music you like.
I don't think that's necessarily a great thing to entirely base someone's entire personality off of, because I listen to so many different genres of music, but it's a vague point to go off of. But other than that show, I have been into the Netflix series Blown Away. I was into that when it first came out. Season 2 just came out, and that show is on a totally different spectrum. That show is about the talent of glass blowing, and that looks super dangerous and super difficult, but it looks so amazing and such a skill. If I could even think of trying to be good at glass blowing, I've never tried to blow glass in my life. I would have to attend a trade school if I wanted to even think about glass blowing, I would probably burn my hands off. Well, it's when
you go to glass and you go
Pretty much, but it's literally making the glass. It's how you make something. It's how you sculpt glass. It's literally the art of sculpting glass. It's literally what I can't phrase it any other way. It's glass blowing. It's what you do. It's how you turn glass into an object. If you were going to make like a lamp made out of glass and it's a spherical lamp, you do that by blowing hot glass into a sphere, basically into a spherical shape, and you mold it. And then that's what they do. And they make it look so easy when they do it because they're all so good at it. But you also have to imagine that glass is smoldering hot. And they just do it so easily, but they are all very talented at it. And I think about trying that. If I were to try that, I would burn my hands off in a heartbeat. I would make the mistake of just touching it or something, or I would touch something very hot. That's as quick as that would be. But that's pretty much what I've been up to the past week or so. Just glass blowing and a dating show. So
nice, buddy. Those are some good side slurps. Some things I've been side slurping. Of course, I've been playing Fire Emblem Three Houses through the church storyline, which is the alternate Black Eagles path. It is the last of the main pathways I have not completed. Very interesting. I gotta say, it's like, I don't feel bad this time because I'm definitely not on the bad guy's side, but it's definitely the most blandest out of all of them so far. The best ones are definitely, in my opinion, the Dimitri / Blue Lion storyline and the Claude / Golden Deer storylines. Again, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the curveball is going to come around, or maybe I've just been playing it so long. But yeah, once I'm done, again, it's my favorite game of all time, but I am looking forward to moving on to other games, focusing on other games. But man, it has been worth it. What a ride. What a ride. I definitely recommend Fire Emblem Three Houses on the Nintendo Switch. I have also been occasionally playing just like maybe like a half hour here, half hour there, Hades, which is very cool. Ooh. It is a roguelike game, and it is available basically on like almost all of the modern platforms, including PC on Steam. It is really cool. It's really fun. Very addictive. The character designs are fantastic. They're beautiful. I personally want to cosplay as the main character Zagreus in the near future when cosplay can be a thing at conventions once everybody's vaccinated. Really want to cosplay as Prince Zagreus, the Prince of Hades. And yeah, very cool game. Check it out. Also, I've been continuing watching Servants, which is on the Apple TV Plus platform. There are new episodes now every Friday, the time of this recording. And yeah, so we're in currently season 2, and it is awesome. It was executive produced M. Night Shyamalan, and it stars a great cast, and one of the main cast includes Rupert Grint, who is Ron Weasley in the Harry Potter movies. And yeah, so go check that out. And I revisited a short film that won the Best Live Action Short Film in 2013 at the Academy Awards. It is called Curfew. It was written, directed, and it stars Sean Christensen, and he's doing a band that used to tour with the Killers. And he made this film, and he got the voice of the actress who played the voice of Dora the Explorer in it, and play his niece in it. And it is so good. Go check out that movie, Curfew, if you haven't. There is a longer version that he ended up getting funding for, and he got Ron Perlman to star in. It's called Before I Disappear. It used to be on Netflix, but I believe you can rent it off iTunes. Also very good. The short film, at the very least, go check that out. It's so cool. And it's so, you like, at least for me, I watch it and I'm like, oh, I want to make that. That can totally be done. It's so cool, and like it's so simplistic but like meaningful, and yeah, it's such a good film. Also continuing reading The Way of Kings, which is part of the Stormlight Archive. It's book 1. So cool. Very cool fantasy. And yeah, that's about it on my side slurps. But other than that, let's move on to our review of Rear
Window.
window. Rear window.
Rear window.
Rear window is a 19. That's bad voice. I don't know what I was impersonating, but I'm sorry if I offended anybody. I just can't talk. Rear Window is a 1954 American mystery thriller film directed by Alfred Hitchcock and written by John Michael Hayes, based on Cornell Woolrich's 1942 short story It Had to Be Murder. Originally released by Paramount Pictures, the film stars James Stewart, Grace Kelly, Wendell Corey, Thelma Ritter, and Raymond Burr. It was screened at the 1954 Venice Film Festival. The film is considered by many filmgoers, critics, and scholars to be one of Hitchcock's best and one of the greatest films ever made. It received 4 Academy Award nominations and was ranked number 42 on AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movie list, and number 48 on the 10th anniversary edition, and in 1997 was added to the United States National Film Registry in the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. So yeah, I said earlier, it was directed and produced by Alfred Hitchcock, and the music was by Franz Waxman. Cinematography was by Robert Burks, edited by George Tomasini, and production company was Patron Incorporated, and the release date was on September 1st, 1954. And the budget was $1 million, which back then must have been a bajillion dollars. Mm-hmm. And in the box office, it made $36.8 million. So, Mr. Meisner, I gotta ask you, have you seen this film before? And if you have, what was it like revisiting it? What was it like watching it back then, if you have? And what was your reactions to it if this was the first time you've ever seen it?
Well, I gotta say, I have never seen Rear Window before. It's very interesting. I've seen a handful of Alfred Hitchcock's films, such as Vertigo. I've seen Psycho. I watched North by Northwest. So the first thing I thought was, where was Bernard Herrmann as the classic Alfred Hitchcock musical composer? What the hell was he not doing the score for Rear Window for? But then I realized, this was a film that was before the Bernard Herrmann times. So he kind of hopped on a little bit later, when Vertigo was 1958 and Psycho was 1960. So Bernard Herrmann, I guess, hopped on that bus a few years later, but not too much later. But in regards again to Rear Window, wow, what a very interesting film, and what a very sort of claustrophobic almost experience, because you're not moving around very much. You're stuck in this apartment with good old L.B. Jeffries, as Jimmy Stewart is referred to in this movie, the main character L.B. Jeffries, and you're stuck with him. He's got a busted leg, and he's in a cast, and there's nowhere for him to go other than that apartment. He can't go anywhere. He's immobile. He's stuck in a wheelchair. And so what can he do other than look out the window of his apartment that he's stuck in? And it's just, it's really amazing to me that sort of confine of the film that you're stuck in, you're trapped to this space, and all you can do is see what L.B. Jeffries is seeing, which is just, he looks out, he sees the characters, referred to as Miss Torso, Miss Lonely Hearts, and I believe the songwriter. And there's a few other people in the little neighborhood. All he can see is out his rear window into the neighborhood. That's all we get in this entire movie. Yet still, even with that limit of what this movie is giving you, it's really still suspenseful. Alfred Hitchcock is all about giving you the suspenseful films, and this movie really delivers with that. Instead of having to show me all these different scenes all over, a gigantic city, all these different spaces, we're getting one set, one location. A gigantic set for that matter. It was a very expensive set for the time. It was about 25% of their budget that they spent to build this set in Los Angeles to emulate New York City. But even with that sort of, although I'm calling it a limitation, and it was gigantic, but with that limitation of space, it's still a very mind-blowing experience, I think, that he brought with this film.
Yeah, I also have not seen this film before. I have seen other Alfred Hitchcock movies, of course, but not this one. And it was cool to see Jimmy Stewart in this film because I actually have not seen any other film that he's done other than It's a Wonderful Life. So to see him in color, see and hear
It's always
his voice.
the first thought with Jimmy Stewart, just like, I want to live again.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, would you want that moon? I'll throw a lasso on it and tie it down. And
Only
you can
this
eat
time
it.
I got a cast on my leg, so it's going to be a little more tricky.
Yeah, and I just wanted to tell him that no man is a failure who has friends, and that's all going to be okay. Anyway, so it was great to see him in something else besides It's a Wonderful Life, and it's weird. This is a personal note, but like, it almost. This film was in 1954, so like I can only imagine this was like a film that like my grandfather, like he reminded me of my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, and I can only imagine that like I don't know, he probably saw this guy as like, oh, that's the way to act like as a man, and he did kind of look like him a little bit back in the day when he was alive, and there was something to his demeanor that was similar. So like in this movie specifically, not so much in It's a Wonderful Life, but in this movie, he did remind me of my grandfather. And so, I don't know, that was a little comforting. So yeah, this film, I thought was very interesting. I thought that it could totally work as a stage play. Granted, it would be scaled down, but it's a game, there's rules, there's a rule by, he can't physically interfere with much because he got a broken leg. That's rule number one. The protagonist is stationary. He can't leave. Okay. Rule number two is that he has a window that he can observe most things, and he's a photographer, so he has lenses, he has binoculars, and he's able to observe different people around him. And then you bring in like this, like what I can always see. It seemed to me that back in the 1950s, and maybe this is like a very narrow-minded view of it almost seemed like being someone who was, because he was like in his 40s at this point, James Stewart, and granted, maybe his like character is supposed to be younger, I don't know, but they left him his gray hair, but they also said he was like a young man too. He's like a young, healthy, youngish, middle-aged man, but he was like still in his prime, and he was single and he was in the city, and I don't know, like watching so many TV shows and movies where like, when you get older, you become a man and you get married and have kids and go home and read a newspaper and smoke a pipe by the fire, and wife makes you dinner and you pat your kids on the head and you go to bed and go back to work again, and buy a house.
You mean life's not that way now?
Not for me. And that, like Pleasantville basically. And to see this, I'm like, whoa, this is like liberal. This is like, he's not settled down. He's like traveling. I'm like, well, this is cool. And this is like the 50s, and so it was a different take on like what it means to be a man, or just an adult, really, an adult
for sure,
who's not married, who doesn't have kids. He's got some gray hairs, and I don't have any gray hairs yet, but I'm sure
he was
it'll
talking
come
about
someday.
taking it to the extreme with Grace Kelly's character Lisa, when they were talking about how, well, first he's talking to the nurse Stella about how he didn't feel like he could marry Lisa because he didn't want to live the sort of exquisite, rich life that she had for his photojournalistic career. And then when he actually spoke with Lisa about that, then he's telling her, like, you ever have to eat, something you didn't want to in Brazil? You ever have to do this and there? And
so you can handle the metro life? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and then, that's what brings them close together, because she ends up like indulging in this dangerous, like, suspicion, like Agatha Christie style, like whodunit and catch the bad guy type of like heist almost with him. And he starts like, he really likes that about her. And yeah, so he does bond with her more and more. And it's nice because like she's in love with him, but also a sign of the times is that like when his friend who is the private eye, the private investigator who was trying to get to investigate the possible murder across the courtyard, whatever, his neighbor, he was giving him eyes when Grace Kelly's character was having her pajamas there and kept like, you tell your landlord anything? It's like, who tells their landlord if they're having like
what a crime,
a girlfriend stay overnight? It's like, geez, like what year? Oh, it's the 50s, but it's like these are adults, like like
and
let
their
them
pajamas, like
their pajamas, like it's and, like he pays rent here. He can do whatever he wants as long as he doesn't like disturb the neighbors or destroy the property. Anyway,
come on.
Oh, here's a fact that I got. Speaking of Grace Kelly, here's a fact I got from mentalfloss.com, which is Jimmy Stewart's wife didn't want him to make a movie with Grace Kelly. Before she was Princess Grace of Monaco, Grace Kelly had a reputation, whether true or not, for having affairs with her male co-stars, even the married ones. One of those men was Ray Milland, who spurned wife just happened to be good friends with Jimmy Stewart's wife, Gloria. Gloria was less than thrilled at the prospect of her husband working with Kelly and developed a bit of paranoia. According to True Grace, The Life and Times of an American Princess, Gloria was on set constantly, watching for signs of an affair. Nothing materialized, although Rear Window cast member Thelma Ritter confirmed that Kelly was a huge flirt. I think it took Stewart back to his fancy-free Footloose bachelor days, she said. I don't say he flirted, but he didn't seem to mind it either. So, a little drama.
To live again.
I just want to live again. Yeah, it's a little trauma for everybody. Also, speaking of, you mentioned Miss Torso earlier. Here's a fact about her. So Miss Torso was actually a teenage ballerina. And by teenage, I mean 17 years old. Georgine Darcy was 17 years old when she was cast as Miss Torso, Jeff's dancing neighbor, which makes all the scenes in which him and his buddy gawking at her were a bit creepy. Like,
she was also very underpaid, I believe.
His private eye friend?
No, Miss Torso.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Just $350 for her work. That's about $3,150 in today's dollars.
Yeah, for an entire film. Like,
yeah, she was in a lot. They got a lot of shots with her. It's not. They should have paid her more. And I don't care if she's only 17. Pay her more. And stop gawking at her. And how's your wife? I love that line. He's like, how can I make him feel uncomfortable while he's drooling at the ballerina across the way, which you shouldn't because she's only 17. Anyway.
Well, that brings up a point that I thought was very interesting as I was looking in a little bit more with this film, is they brought up the point that the theme that sort of circles around this film revolves around the idea of voyeurism. It's got a very voyeuristic theme, which a lot of people, even the Oxford Dictionary, would associate that the term voyeurism with the definition of, quote, gaining sexual pleasure from watching others when they are naked or engaged in sexual activity. However, the term is more loosely related to the observing of others. So not necessarily engaged in sexual activity, but just the joy or the pleasure of just watching people, which is exactly what the character L.B. Jeffries, or Jimmy Stewart's character, is gaining from looking at everyone. It's not even necessarily
for a living too.
Yeah, he's a photojournalist. It's not even necessarily him just in trying to solve a murder here. It's the fact that he enjoys looking at people. And it's literally all he can do because he's got a broken leg and he can't leave his place. But you can tell that he's also gaining pleasure from not only looking at, this girl dancing from across the way, but he wants to get pleasure from looking at the woman who's lonely, from the diagonal view of his way. He's looking at the guy's songwriting. He's looking at the entire neighborhood. And you can tell that it brings him pleasure. And not to link too much with contemporary society today, but don't we all gain pleasure from looking at other people?
Yeah, it almost seems like whatever you're getting that from, like, it makes it sound like it's perverted or something just to, like, people watch. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's
The
anything
nurse
wrong
calls
with,
him window shopper.
Yeah, when, like, he was like, I'm like, so what? Like, they all, I mean, if they don't want to be watched, they should pull their window blinds down. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, oh, you're going to end up arrested.
But,
like,
but you know,
that's arrested for that.
That's what I'm saying about aren't we all window shoppers anymore? This movie was made in the 1950s, 1954 to be exact. Mm-hmm. But aren't we all window shoppers now because we all have cellular devices? We all have portable windows. We are all window shopping at all times now.
But the thing is that, like, if we're getting, let me think about that. So if we're getting into that, we're window shopping on stuff that people post. You know, people like put it on, like, pictures. Like, I'm going to put pictures on my Facebook, and, like, you know, people look at that stuff. Now, when people, for instance, when somebody's like, oh, do you stalk me on Facebook? It's like, no. Like, whenever someone says, like, oh, do you stalk me on Facebook? Like, they didn't stalk you on Facebook. They just look at the shit that you posted on your Facebook profile. It's like, no one stalked you. Stalking is like when you fucking follow someone on their way to work, or like find where they live and end up on their doorstep or something, or throw a rock at their bedroom window. That's stalking. Looking at someone's Facebook profile is not stalking.
Okay. Okay. Because so maybe
no. I think that's a good point though. And for instance, though, and I don't know the real ethical question about this, but I like talking about it, is that, like, when someone, for instance, Jimmy Stewart's character, L.B. Jeffries, looking at the window. Now, granted, they're not, you know, being like, hey, look at this window of me. You know, look through my window world. I'm posting this basically, like, on Facebook. Like, I'm posting this for people to look at, to represent me, to represent a digital or public persona. Granted, they're not putting it out there. They just have their blinds open. So it's like this, like, okay, they're not providing it. It's just that they don't have the door closed to it. And It's like, should I watch? I don't know. They have the blinds open. They know that they live near other people too. Yeah. So I don't know. You know, I don't know the ethical answer to that.
Yeah. I don't want to get too far away from L.B. Jeffries' character. I just thought it was very interesting that our society is like that now. But in terms of L.B. Jeffries' characteristics, I guess the nurse can call him window shopper all she wants. That is potentially what we can say L.B. Jeffries is doing. He is looking at people that don't know he is looking at them, until much later in the movie when our murderer, Lars Thorwald, finds out that it is L.B. Jeffries who is looking at him. Otherwise, L.B. Jeffries is just looking at all these people out his window, and he's looking at, you know, Miss Torso, Miss Lonely Heart, and he's just seeing how their lives are being played out. And I believe one theory was that each one of those windows was supposed to represent the potential outcome for L.B. Jeffries' lives. That's supposedly supposed to be a sort of metaphorically, it could have been what is supposed to be the outcome of L.B. Jeffries' life. If so inclined, you know, it could be what his life would be.
That's interesting. Also, the songwriter, little fact about this from mentalfloss.com too. The songwriter was a real one in real life. Ross Bagdasarian played the pianist's neighbor, who is frequently seen composing new pieces. The credit bills him as the songwriter, which is pretty appropriate, considering that Bagdasarian did when he wasn't acting. He was also a pianist and a composer himself, and he made his name creating Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Hell yeah!
But before he recorded the Chipmunk song in 1958, he helped Hitch with his Rear Window cameo. Watch The Songwriter's Apartment and you'll see a portly fellow winding his clock. I don't like when they say portly, it's bad. Anyway, that's that.
Hitchcock always shows himself in his movies. That's his thing. He's all about making the cameo in his movies. I did have a nice little laugh when I noticed him in the songwriter's room, though. That was the moment where I looked at my movie and it's just, there he is. There's the man himself.
Found him. Got him.
It's like, Where's Waldo? You see Alfred Hitchcock and you're like, there he is.
Got him. So yeah, and folks, in case you haven't seen this, LB Jeffries, he's in his apartment, and yeah, he has two confidants. One is his girlfriend, I guess. She comes more of a, I don't know, close relationship later, and maybe they were close earlier in life. I don't know. Were they like a thing, Adam, or
LB Jeffries and
they were
Lisa?
dating at least, but were they like committed? I don't, it seemed like they dated. They were like serious in the past, and they weren't serious now.
I think so. I think
like up in the air dating.
I think Hitchcock was trying to show that through visual cues in the beginning of the film when he was setting up LB Jeffries' character as a photojournalist. You can kind of see in the photographs in the building, the apartment, when he's showing around the room, you can see the photographs of various areas of the world and things like that. But then you can also see the photographic print of Grace Kelly, like Lisa, in a normal print, and you can also see the positive print of Lisa that's sort of indicating, okay, because you can see the regular picture and the positive print, that clearly this guy is some sort of a photographer. It's kind of indicating that this guy must have some sort of career in photography. That's sort of the indicator that he's doing this as employment, but it's also, I think, an indicator where he's got to have some kind of connection with this girl.
Mm-hmm. And he's traveling around. He's not really in one place at one time very long, and she's in love with him. But yeah, so he has Lisa there coming and going. And he also has Stella, who's basically his caretaker for the time until he gets his cast off. And these are the two people that he talks to as he's observing the commotion that's behind him, and it really sets off like really. The shit hits the fan basically when the dog gets killed. There's a neighbor who has a dog who is really cute.
So sad.
That because I was like, oh, this is really cute. They like let the dog out by like lowering this like rope tied to a basket.
Did the dog fall out of the basket?
Yeah, it's like maybe it's your fault. You like in your cute little basket move, you like dropped the dog. And it's like no, the dog was strangled.
Yeah, when they said it was strangled, that's when I was actually kind of relieved. I was like, oh, thank God the dog didn't fall out of the basket.
Thank God it was strangled. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank God that someone strangled that mutt and not.
I didn't want it to fall out of the basket.
I don't know. I think I'd rather fall than get strangled if I had to choose to die, like how I die.
Maybe
as a
the
dog.
family would rest easier knowing that it was an accident.
It'd be their fault though. They'd have to live with that.
Oh man, it's rough either way.
Yeah, it's rough either way. But they got a new dog at the end, and it seemed like they just forgot about that dog. Anyway,
so
that's when the shit hits fan, and they do some more detective work. And I gotta say that up until that, I don't know, up until like when stuff started to get like dicey, I started to get a little bored. I did like them setting up what was, the
now wait
area.
a second. Now, first of all, I want to know why you're getting bored. But second of all, can I also say that whole community, that entire neighborhood did not care that dog got strangled, because they all came out. They were all wondering why this family was screaming about a dog getting strangled. Everyone was listening. She put her heart on the table, wondering who strangled this dog. Somebody fess up. Nobody said anything. And then she went back in her house, and everyone just kind of looked around like, oh, well, and they all start laughing and going back in their house. And I just want to say I thought that was a great play by Hitchcock on that, just to show that the entire neighborhood's like, well, we don't give a fuck. Like, we're all just going to go back to what we're doing.
Yeah, even the songwriter who had like a small party in his apartment, they all like took notice when they were screaming, and then like oh, and they just went back to partying like right afterwards.
Nobody cared.
And there is it was like around that time, like that scene where she was like yelling like, we're neighbors care about each other, like neighbors like look out for each other. And it's like it's a little bit of a commentary of like living in a city, like you and me, Adam, we live in a big city, and like I don't know my neighbors, like I don't know them. I see them like sometimes. I interact with him very rarely, and I lived in a bunch of different neighborhoods in Chicago, and like, I dated one. We're friends now. It was very brief.
What does that say?
It was in the past. She's a cool person, but I just like popped in my head like, oh, I did actually get close to one of them. But yeah, it was very brief. It was like 6 weeks. But yeah, she's a cool person. We're still friends. But that was the only time that I got like actually close to my neighbor and her roommate, and we became friends too. And other than that, I never interacted really and got close to my neighbors. But like if you're in a small town or like a suburb or something, there's like, you know, people with neighborhood watches and stuff like that. Like, oh, we'll look around. It's a community, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's what I first felt like this movie in the beginning. It felt like, oh, this is like a cool community. You know, there's like all these different apartments next to each other. And it felt like, oh, like this is really cool. Like, I think this is like, that's why I was thinking like it'd be like really cool as a play because like people are just stacked up on each other. But even though everybody's so close to each other, they're also so isolated. They're so isolated in their own lives, in their own world. And the thing is that is actually very realistic. What has your experience been, Adam, compared to this movie with your neighbors and living in the city?
Well, the neighbors in my apartment complex right now, I know the people that are in my building. I don't speak to them a whole lot, but when it comes to certain things that happen with the building itself, like if we need to be in communication with one another, sometimes we'll send out a text message as a group message to each other between the floors just to let each other know, hey, this is something you need to know, just so you're aware, that sort of thing. Otherwise, we don't typically talk to one another. And other than that, if it comes down to the people next door, like the houses next to my building or across the street or anything like that, I have no idea who's down my street. I don't know who's around the area, really. I know who my landlord is. That's really the extent of it. It's just like the people in the city, like you said, DJ, we're in a big city. There is a lot of people, and it's just one of those things, like, you can't remember every single person. You can't remember everything. Our life is not the game of Jeopardy. We can't remember everything, and we can't remember everyone. I wish we could. I wish we were built and designed that way, but we're not. And
I think we could if we wanted to. I think if we wanted to learn who our neighbors are and friend them on Facebook, and you know, and have like events, because like we befriend like tons of improv people in the city.
To what extent though? I mean, it's like, how many people do you want to remember, and how hard do you want to remember them? Because
it's the thing is, we don't want to. If we wanted to, I think we could, but like we don't. Like, let's be honest, like there's no hate or like,
it's one of those things where seeing faces and remembering names, like if I met you and I was introduced to you and I saw you last night or something like that, then yeah, I'd remember your name, I'd remember your face. And how many times I see you on a reoccurrence, that would also impact how well I remember your name and remember your face and things like that. Mm-hmm. But if I saw you once and then I haven't seen you for 5 years or something, then it's kind of like, I remember you from that time, but I may have forgotten your name or something like that. Or how many times are you showing up on my Facebook feed? Things like that. And then it's like, okay, now take that and times it by 1,000 and remember all those names. It's like it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and Hitchcock portrayed that really well, and in this movie, and yeah, we definitely saw an example of it when the dog died, and people just went back to their thing after seeing if like someone, and I think it would have been a different reaction too if like it had been like a person that died there, you know, and there's like, oh, it's a dog, and they just went back, and that's heartbreaking. It's like, oh, poor doggy. But thankfully, LB Jeffries and Lisa and Stella got to the bottom where it was deeper than that. It was because of a man that was dangerous in their community.
Well, that dog was finding evidence. I don't know if they even cared about the dog. They were just like, that dog was finding evidence for us. So
when he tried to get rid of the dog because the dog is evidence of something bad that leads to even something worse, you know, it's like,
would LB Jeffries try, or the murderer?
The murder.
Oh yeah, the murderer would try to get rid of the dog. Yes,
but he didn't though, right? Because they found the dog.
Did they? They say that in the end.
Well, the dog owner screamed and like, oh no, he's been strangled. No.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you would think he'd try and hide the body of the dog. Yeah,
it's like, you know, I don't mean to be. You know, it's like there's probably garbage cans. You know what I mean? Like, I love dogs.
If you can hide a woman's body, you can hide a dog's body.
I was just saying, you can probably throw it in the trash or something. Like, you know, it was a small dog that fit in a little, like, you know, Toto basket or something like that.
Yeah, or if
like,
you chopped the body of the woman, can't you chop the body of the dog? Like,
We're just trying to help you out, murder. No, I'm just kidding. Listeners, we don't advocate killing dogs. We don't advocate murdering anybody or chopping anybody up or strangling dogs. Do not ever do any of those things. We're just curious what was going through the murderer's head at this time in the world of this movie.
Just an FYI, this is a review of Rear Window.
We're not giving tips on anything malice or bad or violent ever. But anyway, so yes, I was a little bored at the beginning of this film, but like it was after they introduced like L.B. Jeffries and Lisa and Stella and like, you know, the view that we had from the rear window. And like it was towards like after like you getting to know a little bit like the complicated relationship between Jeff and Lisa, and it was just starting to get slow for me. It's like, okay, I know the given circumstances, I have an idea of the main characters. Okay, there's, you know, all these people rustling around, and I'm like, is this a Hitchcock film? Like, that's gonna be a little more suspenseful. And the first act did for me. It kind of stalled a little bit. It was a little too long. You know, the action, I needed like to get to the suspense faster, you know? But once it got there, I was like, okay, cool. I'm in. This is cool. I'm really engaged. This is thrilling. And then it really picked up for me. And I was like, okay, my questions about this film are now gone. Like in terms of like, is it good or not? It's great. I'm in. I'm engaged. So yeah, I thought that this kind of film back then was really, really great in terms of like how thrilling it was, but yet also, other than just them mentioning that the dog was strangled, how non-violent it was too. It really wasn't a violent movie. It really wasn't a gory or bloody movie. But I don't know about you, Adam, but I felt stakes involved. I felt worried for the characters, especially when L.B. Jeffries was getting attacked and like in his wheelchair by Thorwald.
Yeah, I thought something was going to happen, and I thought it was very interesting that his only defense in all of that was, first off, in the dark. He had no light in there, and his defense was, let me pick up the flash for my camera to try and slow him down, because my first thought when I saw that was, how in the hell is he going to defend himself with that flash? And then as Lars is walking towards him, he's just trying to slow him down. He's trying to blind him to slow him from even getting close to him. And as he started to do that, my first thought was, okay, that's actually pretty smart. I like that. I don't know how well that would work in today's time, but for the sake of this film, very impressive, L.B. Jeffries. I like that. I also found out when I was looking deeper into the making of this film and just what Alfred Hitchcock's brain was thinking as he was making this. Apparently, Hitchcock was very influenced by German Expressionism in filmmaking. And in an interview, Hitchcock stated that if you bring somebody into a kitchen and jump up onto the table and scream, that's shocking. But if the kitchen looks like Dr. Caligari's cabinet, you expect somebody to jump up on the table and scream. So he played off the norm, sort of a normal-looking kitchen, so to speak, to create suspense. So if you have a kitchen that looks like Dr. Caligari's cabinet, rather than a normal kitchen, the expectation is if it looks like Dr. Caligari's cabinet, you would expect them to scream. But if it's a normal-looking kitchen, you wouldn't expect them to scream. So you want the normality rather than the total Dr. Caligari's cabinet-looking kitchen. So he was going for that. However, on the other hand, he was using German expressionistic-looking lighting, to which they were saying you can see this in the treatment of Jeffrey's apartment, where he is often seen hiding in the shadows.
Yeah, and Alfred Hitchcock was also inspired by 2 actual murder cases. Although John Michael Hayes wrote the screenplays for the movie, Hitchcock helped the actual crime at the center of the story. As he told Francois Truffaut, he lifted 2 items. Francois Truffaut. He lifted 2 new items from the British press: the 1910 case of Dr. Holly Crippen and the 1924 case of Patrick Mohan. Crippen killed his wife, told his friends she went to America, and then aroused suspicion by flaunting his security around town. Police later found body parts of the Crippen home and arrested the doctor for murder. Some now believe Crippen was innocent. Mohan also dismembered his pregnant girlfriend. Oh my God. Throwing pieces of her body out a train window. Jesus.
Ooh, boy.
He didn't know what to do with her head. And it was this gruesome detail that inspired Hitchcock to include a plot thread about digging up neighbors' flowers bed for evidence.
That sounds like
Hitchcock.
the combo we got in Rear Window.
Yeah. So yeah, Hitchcock was like, yes, my favorite, and put that
Just
in
like that. He probably said it just like that. Yes, my favorite.
I've got it. Bingo.
Even though I sounded like Foghorn Leghorn when I said that. Yeah, my favorite, I tell you.
Oh man, those murders sound horrible. God rest those souls. That is horrible. Anyway, yeah, so that's little factoids there from mentalfloss.com on Hitchcock. Anyway, in terms of critical reaction, back around the time of the film, Bosley Crowther of the New York Times called the film a tense and exciting exercise and deemed Hitchcock as a director whose work has a maximum of build-up to a punch, a maximum of carefully tricked deception and incidents to divert and amuse. Crowther also noted that Mr. Hitchcock's film is not significant. What it has to say about people and human nature is superficial and glib, but it does expose many facets of loneliness of city life, and it tactfully demonstrates the impulse of morbid curiosity. The purpose of it is sensation, and that it generally provides in the colorfulness of its detail and a flood of menace toward the end. I think I mostly agree with that. It's mostly like it's a snapshot of day-to-day life in a city when everybody's living in small spaces really next to each other, and there's lots of people. And then you have like a few murder cases thrown in there to make things suspenseful, or a murder case to make things suspenseful. And I think it captures a slice of life really well. I think it's more about, to me, it was more about that than, even though like the catch the murderer, catch the bad guy was very thrilling and exciting. Especially when like Lisa was like going into the apartment and like getting really worried for her that the bad guy was gonna like attack her, and
that was intense.
That was scary. I was like, oh no, Lisa, and like Jeff couldn't do anything. That was just like, oh my God, like I hope she's gonna be okay. And then like, yeah, she ends up being okay, and thankfully, and so yeah, even though those were like the most intense moments that were like very, very engaging, the slice of life I think was almost a bigger part of it. So yeah, I think Bosley Crowther really tied it up really well in his statement for the New York Times.
I think that slice of life element in this film, though, was really a big draw for me, because when you were seeing life through the lens of L.B. Jeffries, when he was looking at people out of his window, whether that be through a camera lens or binoculars, I thought it was really interesting that, one instance it may be a woman who's practicing dance. Another instance, it may be a guy who's writing a song. And I think the craziest instance, or one of the craziest instances, would have been with Miss Lonely Hearts. First, she's looking like she is severely lonely, obviously with the name Miss Lonely Hearts, the nickname that he gave her, as she's, pouring a glass of wine for herself and the imaginary person she's imagining a date with. And she's got this whole instinctual fantasy date going on, and then she starts crying because she's imagining this date. That whole scene, I was just thinking, man, she is... First thought is she's totally crazy, and then the second thought I'm having is, no, she's just seriously lonely, and she's wishing that someone was there. And of course, the next scene that you see Miss Lonely Hearts in, she is on a real date, but this is what the dude is trying to take advantage of her. She almost gets taken over. The dude is trying to just hook up with her in the wrong way. Thankfully, she gets out of that, and thankfully she kicks the guy out.
Oh yeah, she took care of the business. She took care of him and kicked him out.
But wow, when I was watching that, I was just thinking, I hope that this does not go the wrong way, because I do not need to see that in this film. But
she's lonely, but she's not desperate.
Right. That is a strange turn of events for that scene to go. And I guess maybe strange isn't the word, but just not the way I wanted to see that go for a nicknamed Miss Lonely Hearts.
She has standards. And she's strong. If you're not going to treat her right, she'll kick you the fuck out. So good for her.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, also another reaction, which is nearly 30 years after the film's initial release, our good friend Roger Ebert, a good friend that doesn't know we exist, Roger Ebert reviewed the re-release by Universal Pictures in October 1983 after Hitchcock's estate was settled. He said the film developed such a clean, uncluttered line from beginning to end that we're drawn through it and into it effortlessly. The experience is not so much like watching a movie as like spying on your neighbors. Hitchcock traps us right from the first, and because Hitchcock makes us accomplices in Stewart's voyeurism, we're along for the ride. When an endangered man comes bursting through the door to kill Stewart, we can't detach ourselves because we looked too, and so we share the guilt, and in a way we deserve what's coming to him. Jeez.
Exactly. Exactly. Keyword voyeurism.
Yeah. And the review agitator website, Rotten Tomatoes, reports an approval rating of 99% based on 70 reviews with an average rating of 9.16 out of 10. And the critics' consensus states that Hitchcock exerted full potential of suspense and in his masterpiece. Critical acclaim for Rear Window. So
and the 1% disliking it is the helicopter landing at the beginning of the film.
And also the fall. Remember when L.B.
Yes.
Jeffries fell? That looked so weird.
1950s effects, I tell you.
That was pretty hokey. Just a helicopter and that. Pretty hokey. Other than that, great. But yeah, buddy, we're coming up about that time, so let's move on to our slurps up, slurps down section. And by what I mean that, if you're new to the show, this is a time where we give our final verdict for the film. It's very binary, but we also fill in on some extra thoughts and some levels, whether it's like a straight up slurps up or like a kind of slurps up or like a slurps down. Like, I feel bad that I'm giving it slurps down. So we tell you all about it and our final thoughts, our final review, which is our slurps up or slurps down. Mr. Atomizer, what's your final verdict and your final thoughts, my friend?
Dash gear hard, I want to live again. Well, with this one, 1954, Rear Window, I've got to say, I think for Alfred Hitchcock, I think it was a great film for what it is. I think for the type of film it is, it's not what I expected from an Alfred Hitchcock film, from what I've seen from his other movies. And for that, I've got to give it some merit. I was definitely interested in the movies. I watched it. I think, as you said, there was certainly a time when I was watching this movie, perhaps in the beginning, perhaps a little bit later, there were times that came in and out where I felt a little bit of a disconnect from the movie and wasn't entirely in it all the way. But I can't say with that statement that I didn't think the movie was good. I think that the scenes in this movie were interesting. I think the characters are interesting. I think the biggest characters, obviously, in this movie that were interesting to me were James Stewart, and Grace Kelly. They were really tying this film together. And there wasn't a whole lot else that needed to be really in, and the set of the movie was a very big player for this. And I just thought the whole plot of this was very interesting, that it all came down to this guy in a cast. He can't go anywhere, and so he's just going to look out his window and try and figure out this murder case. So I was really into it with what they had to figure out, and I got to give it a slurps up for what it is. I found it very fascinating with Jimmy Stewart's character and the way things wound up in the end.
Yeah, it's so as I mentioned before, there's some hiccups in this where the helicopter, the L.B. Jeffries falling out the window, but and other than that, I mean, definitely feel weird about what was it? Those two guys, spying on Miss Torso and knowing she was only 17. That's not cool. Other than that, as a whole, I did really enjoy this film. I really liked the snapshot, the motion picture snapshot of the community that was basically a replica of like somewhere in Greenwich Village, New York City, even though it was built in Los Angeles, the set. And it made me think like, oh, we could, totally do this like as a play on stage. I think that would be really cool. I used to take a lot of directing classes in college for theater and as well as film, but also I got to direct a few things on stage, and I think it'd be really cool to adapt this as a stage play once we're all vaccinated, of course. Anyway, I really liked the story. I liked the different elements. I am with you, Adam. I think that the two most engaging characters are L.B. Jeffries and Grace Kelly's character, losing her name. Her name is Lisa Carol Fremont. And I thought they were great. I thought Stella was fantastic. Thelma Ritter really played her well. I liked just her calling out L.B. Jeffries' bullshit, and I loved her part of the crew. It is something I never knew existed before, so I'm really glad that you brought it to the table. And it definitely had that Hitchcock feel, but not too aggressive. Like I said before, I think what matters most is like the snapshot of the community, how so many people are living so close to each other in such a small space, and yet still isolated. And there's so many different lives happening at once, and all in such a small space. And how could you not help yourself but look? And you can look in this and you're not actually looking at anybody because it's a movie and it's not real. So have fun with your voyeurism in this movie, because you're not, anyway, I don't know. Maybe I'm an evil person for saying that. I hope I'm not. If I offended anybody, I apologize. And I'm going to give it a slurps up. Slurps up. Go watch this movie if you haven't seen it. It's a really good movie. It's Alfred Hitchcock classic which I wish I watched earlier in life. But I'm still a young man, and Mr. Miser is introducing some great films in my life that I had not seen yet in film school, which is like, hey, film school, why didn't we watch this? Anyway, whatever. You couldn't watch every movie in film school. Even if you go to film school, how could you watch every movie? How can one person watch every movie ever? So anyway, no judgment on my teachers.
Invite you to take that.
No judgment on my film teachers. But if you haven't seen this, go watch it. I had to rent it on iTunes, Amazon, something like that.
Amazon.
Like
it's actually very cheap, but you can buy it on Amazon for $7.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Window.
Slurp up. Slurp up. Go watch it. It's great. So, with that, thank you for listening to our review of Rear Window, everybody. And now it's a time of the episode where we do plugs. Yes, it's solo plug time. This is the part where we please ask you to go check out some stuff that we're doing separately. Mr. Animizer and I are besties, but I've just so you know, I do have a handful of besties in my life, but you're one of them, Adam. You're one of my besties. You're one of my best friends.
Hurts my feelings.
You're one of my best bros. We're bros, dude. Anyway, we can't do everything together, but we want to plug the things that we're not doing together. So we're Slurpees and we do solo stuff. So anyway, a solo plug for me, Dash Gearhart, is I stream. I stream on Twitch. I play video games and I do other fun things on my channel. So follow me at twitch.tv/-jayhart. That's twitch.tv/DASH. JAYHART. You can also follow me on Instagram. Of course, it's a private Instagram, but you can follow me, and if you look like not a bad person or not a robot, I may accept it. You can go ahead and try to follow me at Dash Gearhart. That's my last name. GIERHART. Dash DASHGIERHART on Twitter and on Instagram.
And you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram at Adam Meisner, or you can hit me up on Twitch as well, /A Meisner. And I make music. I do covers. I do original stuff. You just let me know what you want to hear, and I will probably play it for you. Just tell me nicely, and that's just a key word. You just tell me what you want to hear.
Can you do like a jazzy a cappella version of Go-Go Power Rangers?
Like do some snaps and just like a 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3. And then I get some smooth just Go, go, Power Rangers. I gotta be the drums and the vocals on this one.
Dude, you know how Zoom is? It's not going to be synced up. It won't sound good, even if I try to help you.
You can try. Go for it.
Go, go, Power Rangers. Go, go, Power Rangers. Go, go, Power Rangers. You Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
And then,
well, that wraps up for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. This is Screen Slurps, and we say thanks for listening, everyone, and please be sure to follow us on social media. We release new episodes every Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and just about everywhere you can find podcasts on the internet, including YouTube. And please be sure to follow and subscribe to us on those platforms, please, please, please. And if you like our show, please give us a nice 5-star review in the Apple Podcast app. It will definitely help our show. And please recommend us to everyone in your multiverse.
Yes.
It will also help the show grow to new heights. Help us grow big. Make my Goldar grow. Closing out, this is Dash Gearhart.
and I'm Adam Meisner.
Slurps up, everybody, and we'll catch you later.
Later.